Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadidamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Have you ever wondered why some healing sessions feel deeply transformative while others feel like they just touch the surface? Or maybe why experienced healers often work very differently than they did when they first began. Today I want to talk about how healing work evolves over time and how Reiki can become not just a technique, but a real path of spiritual development, intuition, presence, and deep listening. Namaste and welcome to the Spiritual Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Savithri, Director of the American Reiki Academy and the Vedic Healing Center. I'm a Reiki master, Vedic healing master and priestess, and spiritual guide. I've practiced and taught spiritual self-development and healing for more than 35 years, led pilgrimages to India, and studied with blessed Indian gurus. In this show, we cover topics related to metaphysics, Reiki, Vedic healing, manifestation, spiritual growth, and feng shui, based upon my studies and work in these disciplines. The aim of this show is to help you awaken, develop, and tap into your spiritual power in order that you may live well, manifest your dreams, and ultimately fulfill your unique divine destiny. Welcome back to the podcast, and today I want to talk about something I've been thinking about for a while, and this comes as an extension to my last episode, which had to do with a basic Reiki session. If you've listened to that episode, if you have not, you may want to go back and listen to it. So today, what was coming to me as a natural extension of that episode is how healing work evolves over time. Because one thing I've noticed after many decades of working with Reiki, Vedic healing, meditation, mantra, yoga, energy work, and spiritual practice is this: the way that you practice healing changes dramatically as you mature. When many people first begin Reiki, there is a strong focus on technique, and that is beautiful. That is appropriate. So we think about where to place the hands, how to use the symbols. There are sacred symbols that you learn in the advanced levels of Reiki, how long to stay in each position, what's correct. You're always looking for what's correct, and you're asking your Reiki master. And that idea of something being correct is kind of amusing because, that's kind of a judgment also. So there is no right and wrong, but there is specific guidance that is important in the beginning. So all of this is natural. Every path really begins with structure, but over time, healing work becomes less mechanical and more intuitive. When I first learned Reiki, I remember I used to look at the clock and I would try to time my hand positions. And even, this is kind of funny, I remember there was some music that was promoted as music for Reiki. And in the music, and there are probably many recordings like this now, there is a bell that rings, whoever recorded it, rings a bell, or a chime every few minutes to remind you to move your hands. So when I first stumbled upon that, I tried it and I felt it was very disruptive to the experience. And also, because, even in class, people would say, should I get Reiki music? And I always kind of a little bit cautioned them, although to some people that might be very appealing. But I told them Reiki is going to develop into a more intuitive experience. So that ringing of the bell or the chime might be intrusive, actually, and really counterproductive, because the recording cannot know what's going on between you and the person you're working on. So as we develop, we begin to understand that healing is never about trying to do something to another person. It is really about listening, about perceiving, about holding space for the healing to occur in that moment. So you're always learning how to become a clearer channel of this energy. And that's why really Reiki softens your ego, because you're quite aware that you are not doing anything. You are facilitating change and movement and awareness and healing. So the Reiki practitioner acts as the channel. And this is a very humbling experience. Perhaps I would say some of the deepest healing sessions I have experienced over the years were maybe not extremely dramatic on the outside. So I've had many interesting types of body work and learned interesting types of body work that I incorporate with the Reiki. And some of them produce or can produce an overt movement of energy in the body. So, and this kind of movement is a freeing of energy within the system. And it translates very well to social media these days, because you see people kind of writhing on the table and, it looks very dramatic, and the healer is touching their energy field, and, they are emoting. They might be crying or laughing or, moving in a certain way. And yes, this is dramatic and it calls people in, but however, healing does not and have to happen like that. In fact, I worked with a really highly experienced chiropractor once, and he had gone through all of that in his practice and in terms of the work he was doing. And now he had transitioned into a more subtle form of release and of healing. And we talked a lot about that. And it is what I have noticed also in the way I process energy in a healing session. And it is how I transmit the energy to people now. So I'm not looking for an overt experience. I'm not looking for somebody to sob on the table, somebody to have really overt and dramatic movements of their body. It can happen, yes, but healing doesn't have to occur that way. It doesn't mean that if it occurs that way, then something is really happening. And if it occurs in a more quiet way, nothing much is happening. That's my point. So healing can occur both ways. And really, as you work with the deeper levels, it's going to calm down in the energy field. All of that movement of the body is going to probably dissipate. I saw, for instance, here's another example I just thought of, because I do channeling. So I channel, I hear messages from the angelic realm. And I saw somebody online channeling, and her body was making all sorts of movements, and her eyes and her hands, and people were commenting and wow. But here's the thing, you don't have to process that through your body like that. The messages can come, and I think what happens too is they come as in a more smooth way as you yourself smooth out your own energy field. So there's less interference. So there doesn't have to be the jerking of the body or the movement of the eyelids, different things that you may have seen. So I just wanted to make that distinction here. And so let's go back to what I was saying. Some of the deepest healing sessions I've experienced over the years were not overtly dramatic. Sometimes very little was said. The healing happened through presence, through silence. I can recall right now in this moment, it just came to mind, a healing session I had where I was transported far, far away. And when I came back to the space, I felt tremendous. And do you know that the healer who was working on me was sitting off to the side reading a book? In other words, he had touched a few contact points and enabled my system to move in a way that was so profound and amazing. I'll never forget that session. I will never forget that. And when I came to, he looked at me and smiled. He was actually a network chiropractor, which is an amazing modality. And he looked at me and smiled and said, "I was waiting for you to come back." So I studied, some of the things I studied were from chiropractors, some of the non-force techniques that can move energy in the body. And to this day, I incorporate them with Reiki. I think this is important because there's so much emphasis right now online about the overt movements and also collecting modalities, certificates, spiritual labels, techniques. But see, healing works beyond techniques, and it's going to mature slowly as you do your practice. So that means as you do your healing work, if you're a body worker, as you work on people, and also your own dedicated spiritual practice. I've met yoga teachers who never do yoga. They teach. Now, the whole point of moving into this realm where yoga exists and meditation and mantra and Reiki is to develop your spiritual practice so that you may be more efficient in the world, more transformational for those you work on, and that you yourself may expand as a being. And not to put down yoga teachers, I'm not saying that at all, but I remember teaching some different people who they came for Reiki to learn Reiki, and I asked about their spiritual practice, and I asked how much yoga they're doing. I asked about their meditation, because it goes part and parcel with you as being a what is the word? Responsible practitioner. So you can learn and then apply but you must also do in your own life. So true healing work matures slowly. It's going to refine you. And again, it's going to humble you. If you stay on the path long enough, you begin realizing that healing is never about the ego. It's never about putting on a show. And that's why, I sometimes, I'll sometimes laugh a little bit when I see the overt expressions of healing being portrayed. So healing is about becoming, let's say, transparent enough for energy, something deeper to move through you. It's about becoming clear enough for that to move through you. And over time, I've found that the different modalities that I've studied began weaving together naturally in my own work. So while Reiki is a basis, I am going to blend also all of the other modalities that I have learned, not because I was trying to collect tools. Of course, when we're learning all these modalities, there's nothing wrong with learning many modalities, but we are learning them so that we can have a beautiful toolbox that we bring to each session. And one doorway naturally opens the way to another. So this isn't a contradiction. I'm not saying, in one sense, don't learn many modalities. And I'm also not saying just concentrate on one. I'm saying allow them to come together in a beautiful synthesis and really allow them to empower your work to mature slowly. And again, something happens when one of these opens the way for another one. So for me, Reiki, mantra, meditation, Vedic healing, yoga, channeling, energetic perception, other modalities also that I learned, craniosacral work, different modalities, crystal healing, all of them started to blend together and really, as I said, empower the session. So your healing work is going to become more individualized. This is going to happen organically for you as you mature. It's going to become more intuitive, more alive, and you begin sensing what is needed in the moment instead of course, rigidly following any kind of formula. So that's why when I mentioned the Reiki music, although some people might really like that, I thought this cannot guide my session. In fact, it can annoy me or distract me with the chiming of the bell. Probably not annoy me, but just be a bit of a distraction. Because when you're really focused on working on someone, nothing comes into that field. And of course, let's say something else about that chiming, because if I did have that music on, and if the chiming was there, and if it did annoy me, that would be an indication to me that I am not working deeply enough. Because the goal of the yoga practitioner, of the Reiki practitioner, of the spiritual seeker is to be, in fact, unaffected by outside stimulus. So that's another little nuance. So, of course, I could do a healing session and have that kind of music playing, but it would not be my first choice. Let me put it that way. So, for me, as I kept doing healings, I noticed that my discernment in the moment becomes increasingly heightened and important. Not every intuitive feeling also needs to be spoken. You're going to get lots of impressions during the session, and these don't always need to be voiced after the session or during the session. And of course, maturity on this path makes you quieter, more grounded, more responsible. And especially, of course, if you're really doing your practice. So for me, for instance, channeling developed as a very natural extension of years of spiritual practice, healing work, meditation. It matured over the years, and it is not something separate from the path. It's part of the unfolding of the path. It's something I began teaching in Reiki level 2 in a very specific way, because energetic sensitivity without, I would say, a context, without grounding, can become imbalance. So sensitivity, when you combine it with your maturity, will become wisdom. And one of the greatest shifts that happens over time is you really stop trying to heal, and you start learning how to listen. You are not also attached to outcomes. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not trying to make this person get better. You're very aware of trusting the process and trusting the divine timing and allowing the intelligence of the healing itself and the energy to move through the person's body. And this is what allows really deeper healing to happen. Healing is never forceful, never. So if you are a healer, I'd like you to ask yourself, who are you becoming through this work that you're doing? How are you living? How grounded are you? And my most favorite question, how connected are you to your own spiritual practice? This is the most important part of your practice, not the techniques, not the certificates, not the structure, your own spiritual practice. This is what is going to guide you, empower you, enliven you, inform you. It is going to give you everything beyond the structure of what you learned in any class, in any seminar. You could have gone to the greatest teacher in the world, and if you are not doing a regular spiritual practice, those techniques are only going to be as good as the techniques. So it is up to you. Actually, it is a responsibility. I'm just thinking of this word right now. It is your responsibility to work on yourself. And this is something I always did with my Reiki master. I was blessed to have a very interesting and wise Reiki master. And we worked many different techniques together over the years. And she passed away last year suddenly. I believe that, of course, her time had completed here. She had helped everyone she needed to, and she was now passing the baton on to the rest of us to carry on this beautiful layered work that she did. So we started with Reiki many years ago. I think, let's see, my first session was in 1989. And then I quickly learned Reiki right after that. And as I said, we worked with many different modalities, and we continued to work on the phone and long distance, exploring how we can peel back the layers of our own idiosyncratic the areas in our lives that needed to have some attention in order to heal and be made whole, so that we could really blossom. And if you are a healer, I want to again just say that your presence is what you're working on. Your presence should be felt before you even touch someone. And I hope this was helpful. I hope this made sense. I hope this spoke to something in you. If you are not a healer yet and you are looking at maybe exploring healing, Reiki was my doorway, and I'd be happy to share Reiki with you. There's a free audio called Discover Reiki that is linked in the show notes. And you can also always reach out to me on Instagram, send me a DM if you have questions about any of this, about the healing journey, about Reiki, about your incredible development as a spiritual being living in a human body. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Om Sai Ram. Jai Guruji. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Hare Krishna. Om Namah Shivaya.